My name is Michael Dawe, and I'm the Curator of History with the Red Deer District Museum and Art Gallery. And we're doing a series of YouTube features on some of the artifacts from the collection. One of these is this very modest looking button, but it's something very important and something that's very old. This would date back to 1901, and it's the button that was on the uniform for Red Deer's first town constable. In the early days, the policing in this area was provided by the Northwest Mounted Police, later the Royal Northwest Mounted Police, who operated out of Fort Normandeau, and then in 1893 moved into Red Deer and had a barracks just on the west end of Ross Street. However, in 1901, when Red Deer was incorporated as a town, the town decided that they should have their own police department. And so therefore they hired a constable by the name of Neil Mifflin. They paid him $75 a month, and he became the town constable. Now things were quite different in those days because the kind of crime that he dealt with was largely stray animals and bylaw infractions, and there was very rarely any serious crime to develop. And if there was any crime, it usually involved people that had drunk too much alcohol. There was a small brick house where City Hall is now. That was given to Mr. Mifflin for his residence, but it also acted as the police station. They put two tiny cells in the corner of the parlor, as it was then called, or living room, so that if he had to incarcerate anybody overnight, that they would put there. However, Mrs. Mifflin wasn't very much taken with that, so she put in heavy curtains so that the children wouldn't have to see who was sleeping it off in the police cells. It took them almost a year, but they finally bought a resplendent new uniform, as I described it in the council minutes, for Constable Mifflin. Actually, it's kind of tragic what eventually happened to him. He became very ill at a young age, and although he had a young family to support and being ill had trouble creating an income, the town laid him off because they just said that they couldn't justify to the ratepayers supporting someone who was too ill to work, and he passed away leaving a wife and young family. Meanwhile, they hired another constable. They called him a police chief when they did a night constable. But by 1912, Red Deer was growing very quickly and the community really changed. We, by that time, had a police force of about 6, and they did have a lot of crime to develop. The worst instance, I guess, was in 1911 when a itinerant person through the community shot the police chief Bell in the stomach when he was trying to stop a robbery. With the onset of Prohibition during the First World War, crime rate dropped to almost nothing. In fact, in 1917, they only had 2 criminal cases in the entire year. Also, 1917 saw the bringing in of the Alberta Provincial Police. We used to have our own provincial police force, and they replaced the RCMP in the community. However, with the Depression in 1931, the Alberta Provincial Police was disbanded, the RCMP came back, and there was a lot of financial problems trying to keep the town police going. In fact, they were argued one point that they couldn't afford to buy the town police chief a police car, so they told him in case of an emergency he should call a taxi cab to get to the emergency. But the real death knell for the Red Deer Police Department came in 1943. The war was on. It was very hard to find any recruits for the police, even the much reduced police force in Red Deer. So finally in 1943, the Red Deer Police Department was eliminated, and they signed a contract for the RCMP to provide the city detachment, the situation that continues today. But this button, which dates back to 1901, does reflect back to that early era of Red Deer history when Red Deer had its very own municipal police force.